John Hardie's next up with us right now. John's Deputy Director of the Russia Program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thanks for coming on, John. You know, Robert was talking about Sergei Lavrov sitting next to Putin, longtime foreign minister for Russia. Good to see you had a shirt and tie on today. Did you see he came to the airport or to the hotel, Lavrov, with CCCP written across a sweatshirt, you know, not subtle, referring to the Soviet Union, of course. And now he's sitting down at this 3-on-3 meeting. From Russia's point of view, Putin's point of view, Lavrov's point of view, what are they trying to get done today?
Well, thanks for having me on. Putin, I think is probably well known to your audience, has very maximalist demands in this war. As the price for just an initial ceasefire, he wants Ukraine to withdraw from large swaths of territory that Russia hasn't been able to take by force. So today, I expect he's going to try to get Trump on his side to help him push those terms down Ukraine's throat. I suspect Trump will push back against that. So I think President Putin has to kind of walk a fine line between pursuing his maximalist aims on the one hand and not angering Trump on the other.
Is it kind of a buying time strategy for Putin?
I think that's part of it, but his dream is to kind of strike a deal with the United States and then impose that on Ukraine. So if that can happen sooner rather than later, from his perspective, all the better. What if things, though, John, don't go well today? Then what for President Trump specifically in terms of, I know he talked about severe consequences, but specifically in terms of applying pressure on Russia, what might be next? Well, I would hope he would kind of reprise his recent efforts to go after the Russian economy. That could look like using additional secondary tariffs against Russia's major oil customers. China would obviously be next on that list. He could use sanctions, secondary sanctions, go after the rest of the so-called Russian shadow fleet of oil tankers, join with Europe in lowering the G7 price cap on Russian oil. The point is he has a medley of options to choose from. And so, he can make good on that threat of economic consequences. I want to go back to yesterday, guys, if we have the Bill Browder shot, because I want to pick up on what John's talking about there and get more specific in terms of, again, this is hypothetical, sanctions especially, and also military pressure. So Bill Browder, formerly the big, largest foreign investor in Russia, of course, until things, as I said on yesterday's show, went south in the worst type of way, as his lawyer was knocked off, and now he's an outspoken critic of the regime and has been for many years. He was on the show, and we were talking about, what you and I, John, were just talking about, what you do to really make it tough on Putin, really make him come to the table. Here's what Bill said.
Militarily, you give the Ukrainians all the weapons they need to put Russia in a bad position. And we've never done that so they don't lose the war, but we never gave them enough weapons so they win the war. And the second thing is that although we've imposed a lot of sanctions on Russia, we've ignored one huge area, which is allowing Russia to sell their oil. And they make hundreds of billions of dollars a year selling their oil, and we haven't stopped that.
What about that, John? The oil. I know Trump's talked about the tariffs on India. Is there more to do there, and would that work?
I think certainly there's more room to run on the sanctions and tariffs. The Russian economy, their federal budget's very reliant on oil revenue. So if you can restrict that revenue, it really puts their economy, which is already kind of weak right now, in a worse spot. I think on the military side, Mr. Browder raised a good point. There are additional weapons we can provide to Ukraine. In my view, it's not going to dramatically turn the war around. There's no game changer weapon, but we can provide, say, longer range missiles that Ukraine could use to strike military industrial plants deep in Russia. I think that would be significant.
Look at those Ukrainian flags on the streets of Anchorage. Our correspondent Kelly Meyer, who's there covering, and said the house where they're staying, the house next door to where they're staying, I should say, had a big Ukrainian flag above it. You see many people there have taken to the streets, not big fans of Russia, I suppose, either in Alaska, given their history. One last thing for you, John. Security guarantees. I was talking to Robert Sherman about that in his report from Kyiv. Ambassador John Herbst, former ambassador to Ukraine, was on last hour talking about that and more. Here's Ambassador Herbst.
Even before Trump said, as he did on the way to Anchorage that, yes, the U.S. might be willing to participate with security guarantees. Trump was talking about serious security measures that would provide a deterrence to future Russian aggression, like massive arming of Ukraine, like European troops deploying to Ukraine as peacekeepers or peace enforcers. Of course, Putin rejected both of those. That's still his position.
How do you think this plays out, John? Should Trump commit to the security of Ukraine long term?
I would hope so. We're not talking about American boots on the ground, but some form of American support for potential so-called European reassurance force in Ukraine after the fighting stops. So that could be a provision of intelligence, logistics support, maybe some other things that, again, don't involve American boots on the ground. Getting Putin to agree to all that will be difficult. It doesn't necessarily require Russian agreement, but that certainly would make it less risky.
All right, the American flags on that side. We saw the Ukrainian flags before. It's quite a scene in Anchorage outside the base. John, thanks for all your insight and expertise on this. John Hardie.